All right. Good risings, y'all. This is, what is today? This is day 11 of the work-based learning program in week 3. We're going to be talking about part 3 in collective courage, which is 2 more chapters. And we are also going to be going through some selections from a book by Adrienne Marie Brown called Emergent Strategy. So yeah, I mean, that's on the agenda for today. Hope you all were able to finish doing the Gusto stuff, as well as the time cards. But, you know, always reach out if there's something you need support with. And, you know, thanks for y'all who have been doing that. You know, I'd rather you do it while it's small, instead of just like waiting and making it a bigger thing. All right, so week 11, I'm sorry, day 11. Yeah, the quotes that start off part 3 are like super powerful. I was hoping you could start us off with that.
Chapter.
Okay, looks like your connection's going in and out, bro. I'll just take it for us. All right, so part 3, 21st century practices and 21st century solutions. The first quote reads, "The origin of a new form of regional development in the Delta are to be found within the region itself, among the scattered, displaced, and often forgotten movements, projects, and agendas of its African American communities and of other marginalized groups. Generation after generation, ethnic and class alliances arose in the region with the aim of expanding social and economic democracy, only to be ignored, dismissed, and defeated. These defeats were followed by arrogant attempts to purge such historic movements from both historical texts and popular memory. Yet even in defeat, these movements transformed the policies of the plantation bloc and informed daily life, community building activities, and subsequent movements. Within the unreconstructed oral and written records of these arrested developments resides the knowledge upon which to construct new relationships and new regional structures of equality." And I feel like this quote kind of like encapsulates what we've been reading, in that, you know, there's been a lot of attempt by us to get that economic liberation and just like liberation in general. And though like attempt after attempt was thwarted, like in those lie the seeds of our liberation still. And this stuff is still not being taught, intentionally so, we think. What's good, brother? You here? You back, bro?
Yeah, is that better, brother?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I wanted a shot at this one, brother. The next one by the boys. I think this is real powerful.
Yes, please.
Okay, and it says, I propose as the next step which the American Negro can give to the world a new and unique gift. We have tried song and laughter, and with rare good humor, a bit condescending, the world has received it. We have given the world work, hard, back-breaking labor, and the world has let Black John Henry die breaking his heart to beat the machine. It is now our business to give the world an example of intelligent cooperation so that when the new industrial commonwealth comes, we can go into it as experienced people and not again be left on the outside as mere beggars. If leading the way as intelligent cooperating consumers, we rid ourselves of the idea of a price system and become pioneer servants of the common good, we can enter the new city as men and not mules. Du Bois, 1933. That's just powerful right there, brother, in so many ways.
Ashe. Yeah, the quotes starting off this one are really good. And, you know, primarily in this last 2 chapters, we're going to be reading about the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is today's reading, and kind of like the youth movements and current cooperatives in the last, like, I don't know, 20 or so years, going back to maybe the 90s. And so, yeah, this is going to be wrapping us up. And it's kind of bittersweet, but I'm glad that we're like starting with this foundation for you all, because, you know, we're literally standing on these folks' shoulders and building on what they've done. So in the case of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and Land Assistance Fund, I'll read this first quote, which gives a good entry. Since 1967, we at the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund have remained true to our founding purpose of helping people to help themselves through cooperatives. We have developed family farmers, especially those of color, and help them to remain and develop their land holdings as a key to rural community development. We have accepted the challenge of working with the poorest, most neglected, and isolated people in the rural Southeast to help them make a difference in their lives and livelihoods. And that's basically what Fannie Lou Hamer was preaching at Freedom Farms. We read in chapter, was that chapter 8? And she was a part of this founding group, we'll come to find. And so the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, as it says here, founded to promote cooperative economic development as a strategy to support and sustain Black farmer ownership and control over land, and support the economic viability of family and independent farm businesses. Just moving through a little bit.
How you gentlemen doing?
Hey, peace, bro. Doing good.
You too, brothers.
Yeah.
Good to see you, brother. Grand rising.
Grand rising. So the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, in its like first 25 years of existence, helped more than 200 cooperatives and credit unions in more than 7 states, like Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana. And so as you're reading through this book, as you're reading through this chapter, chapter 9, I want for you all to be like paying particular attention to like how this cooperative was developing in its early stages. Like you'll read here in this like Southwest Alabama Farmers Cooperative Association, like the precursor to the ultimate federation, that it primarily started off in education. Like take note of that, like ask yourself why. They were able to like do amazing work in this pre-thing, helping over 1,800 Black farmers. They eventually transitioned into becoming the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, with the support of racial justice and civil rights folks like the Congress of Racial Equity, the Student Nonviolent Coordinated Committee, which we know Ella Jo Baker was running, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was also the same organization as Martin Luther King Jr. And so there was a lot of like intention into this. If you all are following along in the Jackson Rising book clubs that Repair Nations is having on its Instagram, we're reading through this book called Jackson Rising, and it's talking about how politics without economics is empty, right? Because like if folks are just talking stuff, but like can't help the people materially like live and survive, then like, you know, what are they talking about? They can leave. And so, you know, there were comprehensive programs that we don't know about. And the beginning quote talking about how it's been their mission to hide this history from us, you know, it remains the same. So in prompt number 1 for this session, session 11, I'm going to be asking you to pull 2 lessons from either the early years of the Federation or from the federal investigation that comes about later in this chapter. Anything you'd like to add about the like early years, Tut?
Yeah, just veggie backing on what you talked about, brother. How, the '60s we were, indoctrinated with the political fight to be accepted, right? To be seen as human beings. But also on the tail end and sometimes in front, there was a humongous effort to galvanize our farmers, our store merchants, our folks who did basic necessities like creating clothes and just the things we need. There was a equal amount of effort put towards galvanizing and collectivizing those individuals and resources as well. So it's just very interesting if you understand, like Brother Greg said, the political fight is actually empty without an economic foundation. And that's what this chapter really goes in about, the importance of, getting the farmers, in some areas to come together more so than it was to push an agenda to be accepted. And this was kind of held from us for a specific reason, obviously. And if you look on page 195, briefly, they say about cooperatives. So we understand that politics without economics is empty. So they said cooperatives answered that and was proposed as a mechanism to enable Black farmers to reduce costs, convert from cotton to vegetable crops, right? We're trying to convert, increase technical capacity, and improve their collective leveraging by pooling resources, marketing their products together, and transporting products to distant markets. And they were saying co-ops was used as a means to support our freedom. So just understanding that this is a jam-packed snippet and digest it slowly, you can see benefits from it today and why co-ops, we feel like co-ops is the way moving forward.
Can you keep walking us through the chapter for a second, Seth?
Yeah, I got you, brother. So as we continue, so you see on page 197, it's going to go into the early years of the FSC. And it says on 197, the SFC was part of the effort on the part of African Americans to formalize their cooperative efforts and obtain needed financial and technical assistance. Okay, that is very important. Okay, if you're trying to sustain yourself in the work you're trying to do. And I just want you to kind of think in your own sphere of influence what it takes, kind of like what Du Bois touched on earlier with one of his quotes. Traditionally, we were told this story of trying to beat the American machine, of trying to fight the slave master one-on-one, when the real answer was coming together as a collective and pooling our resources and pooling our efforts so that it can be a minimum hardship, on the part of the individual, and transfer some of that weight and struggle to the collective where we can bear the responsibility even better. And the FFC did a lot of this work. And even as you study further, you see that they also connected with the LAF, okay? The League of Farmers, okay? So it's a lot of connections, a lot of cross pollination going on here in this chapter. And it's really in the South, in the South, man. So imagine what they were going through. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
As you all are reading through this, like you might have seen that like a year after they incorporated, they got like 45 member cooperatives that had over 10,000 members, which is like amazing to me. I want you to pay special attention to what it looks like, or I want you to pay special attention to the money they're receiving and the actions or responses that come from that. Especially page 199, I think Ted might have mentioned this, where they're talking about a note about the Southern Cooperative Development Fund and their split. Like analyze the reason why. Ask yourself, like, yeah, just analyze that, please. The second prompt for today is to identify 2 of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives accomplishments. You'll find a ton of them, so it won't be difficult. So yeah, please enjoy yourself reading through these, through chapter 9, seeing the work that the Federation has done for, I think it's been 60 years now. They're still in effect. So yeah, really hoping that you all see what was happening in the place that our ancestors moved from, because most, if not all of us, originated in the South in some way, and our ancestors came this way through migration. So yeah, I hope you all take that on. You'll see that the federal investigation that I was talking about is after the accomplishments. So take note of that because it's also in timeline chronologically. That's how it went down. So yeah, the 2 prompts for today are to give us 2 lessons learned from the early years of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives or the federal investigation. And then prompt number 2 is to give us 2 prompts of the Federation's accomplishments. 2 examples. Okay, so I'm gonna just give us a brief introduction into this book, Emergent Strategy, by Adrienne Marie Brown. And the reason why I'm giving you all this book is because, or giving you all this introduction is because this is one of the values that Repaired Nations has incorporated, or said we move along. And I'd like to introduce you all to it because it's a little bit different than the linear thinking that we're taught. Okay, so initially, Emergent Strategy was a way of describing adaptive and relationships in leadership models that came from Octavia Butler's science fiction. It then grew into plans of action and personal practices, collective organizing tools that account for constant change and rely on the strength of relationships for adaptation. And really focusing on biomimicry and permaculture. Biomimicry is the imitation of the models, systems, and elements of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. Permaculture is a system of agriculture and social design principles centered around simulating or directly utilizing the patterns and features observed in natural ecosystems. And so it's evolved into strategies for organizers, building movements for justice and liberation that leverage relatively simple interactions to create complex patterns, systems, and transformations, including adaptation, interdependence, decentralization, fractal awareness, resilience, transformative justice, nonlinear and iterative change, and creating more possibilities. And so, this nature versus nurture, and just essentially the things that we've learned in a Western context that we're seeking to unlearn is disrespecting indigenous and direct ties to land, being polite or indirect or submissive to not disturb the status quo. Learning that tests and deadlines are the reasons to take action. That's not, it's good to be self-directed, right? We're trying to unlearn that, we need to compete with each other in a scarcity-based economy. And, there are other things, but, just trying to bring you all's awareness to, there are things that we need to unlearn. And, there are methods out there that folks have thought through in terms of how to get us there, or do it as we're moving. And so the elements of Emergent Strategy, they are fractal. Emergent Strategy is fractal, thinking about the relationship between small and large. It's adaptive, thinking about how we change, and that change is constant. It's interdependent, because it's really who we are. We can't help but be interdependent on this planet. It's decentralized. We're sharing. It's non-linear and iterative. And so the pace, the pathways are always changing. And, there's resilience and transformative justice. making sure that, we recover from what we've been learning, and what's been placed and dealt upon us, and what we also like transform. And ultimately, creating more possibilities. So, and that's a way of life in many ways. And so some of the principles that she talks about in this book and goes into much more detail. Small is good, as small is all. The large is a reflection of the small. Change is constant, be like water. There is always enough time for the right work. There is conversation in the room that only these people at the moment can have. Find it. Never a failure, always a lesson. Trust the people. If you trust the people, they become trustworthy. That's from the Tao. If y'all read the Tao, you'll know. Move at the speed of trust. Focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build the resilience by building the relationships. Less prep, more presence. That's the thing about balance, right? You don't want to be so deep in the prep that you can't be present and trying to get people to do what you prepped for. But you also got to be prepared so you're not unprepared. What you pay attention to grows. So those are like the principles, right? And I think we more or less, like just move with those things kind of unconsciously, but they pervade, what we're doing here. There's also some symbols that she uses to like reflect the different things that she's talking about. One second. Oh man, I think my charger died. Okay. So she uses the symbol of mycelium to talk about interconnectedness. Mycelium is the fungus network that connects everything underground. She talks about ants and how they are a symbol of individuals coming together for cooperative work. She talks about ferns and how they're forms of fractals, and like, everything looks the same on smaller or larger scales. She talks about wavicles and how like sometimes a wave is a wave and it's a particle depending on the focus that you're putting on it. And she talks about starlings, which are birds, and how like they're constantly making decisions about how to fly the flock, or like, yeah, how to fly the flock. And the way that the more birds go is the way the flock goes. And lastly, dandelions and how they're often perceived as weeds, but they have a lot of medicinal properties, and they're hard to uproot. So that was the introduction into it. Tut and I had talked about wanting to just create some space for folks. If you wanted to, talk about what we've been learning in Collective Courage up until this point, or just any other questions. We are intending to create a peer space for you all to like have circles and discuss the stuff with each other, but that's not in place yet. So this will do for now. I'm gonna turn off the recording.